Hello and welcome to our second email lesson here. This one is a lot about email, but it's also a lot about a bunch of other things that we're going to talk about or that you're going to hear a lot through the entire term, which is the idea about the joint between author and audience and the way that they interact with each other. This is important to think about not just with writing an email or writing a letter, but with any piece of literature, specifically nonfiction and maybe something like speeches. It's something that you're going to want to be thinking about with almost everything you read. So, strictly, the author is a fairly loose term. It refers to anyone who uses communication. An author could be one person or it could be many people. The author could be someone that uses writing in a book, that makes a speech, that does visual elements like a TV commercial, audio elements like a radio, or even someone that is writing a braille to communicate. As an email author, you'll mostly be writing in a position of which you are at this age in a position of less power than who you're writing to. Chances are, for most of the time that you're going to be writing through high school, all the way up until you get until halfway through college and maybe into the workforce for a while, you're going to be writing where you are in a position of less power. Why is this important to remember? Well, you always want to go out of your way and be more academic and more professional than the person you're writing to, even if the person that you're emailing with back and forth, say it's a college professor, is being super chill and using a lot of slang words and all of this stuff. You could take this as a signal, okay, well, it's okay for me that too, but I would still err on the side of caution and remember that since you're in the lesser position of power, you should always be being more academic than the person you're writing to. This is also important to remember with the idea of sending back and forth a chain of emails. The person in the highest position of power does not have to respond, but the person in the lower always does. So if me and you are emailing, I am your teacher, so I am in the higher position of power because I am teaching you. And so if you email me a question and I email you something back, you should email me back if I give you a response, which I am try my best to always give you a response. You should send something back, even if it's just a thank you for clarifying, or oh, that makes sense, or even if you have more questions, you would obviously ask another email, but say you're completely good. Say you're like, yeah, okay, that cleared things up. You'd say that in an email. I'd see that and be like, cool, this person knows the etiquette about email responses. But since I'm in the higher position of power, I would not have to email back, even if you were the author and the one that started it, and that's just how it kind of works. Like I said, for a lot of situations, it will probably be pretty cut and dry for that. Once you get into the workforce, it might be a little bit more complicated, but for a while, you guys won't have to worry about that. But this is something to remember as you send teachers emails, as you send professors emails, as you're asking for letters of recommendation, all of that. That is how that works, or the order or the number that you're supposed to send back when it comes to emails. So the audience refers to anyone who is receiving this communication. So a lot of times, in this example with writing these emails, you guys are obviously the author, and a lot of times I might be the audience here, or the audience might be the principal in your school. It might be someone in the community. Maybe it's your mom or your grandmother. Whoever you're writing that letter to, that is your audiences. So we want to be able to understand what you're saying, and being aware of how you talk to different audiences is really important. There's an idea called the code switching, which means that your brain, and maybe you guys have already realized that you do this, but you speak differently to your best friend than how you speak to your mom, or how you speak to your teacher, or there should be a difference between those two things. Or maybe at your job, you have a different way of speaking. Actually, the way that I'm recording this right now, my voice doesn't always sound like this. This is my career voice, if you will, but when I'm sitting and talking with my friends, this isn't how I talk. This isn't the tone that I use, nor is it the sort of words that I use with them. And sometimes after a really long day of work, I might still kind of be in this, and my friends will be like, whoa, Lexi, you kind of sound weird. I'll be like, oh my god, I forgot. But this is what our brains do. We code switch. And so it's a lot harder to sometimes have to think about this when you're writing something down. A lot of times in social situations, we just know already, hey, this is the sort of language that I can be using from learned behavior, but this might actually be something you have to think about as you go through and as you start to make your emails, is to consider, okay, who am I talking to? Can I be super casual with this person? Can I put an inside joke? Would this person appreciate a joke? Would this person not want me to? And you'll have to change the way that you write an email in relation to all of that. So you're going to do an activity. This is kind of part 2 of your assignments. But this is one that you'll do in class, so either with a partner or alone, go through the author and audience worksheet. It's linked down here on the daily agenda. It's also on the document as well as on Canvas, and practice the differentiation between the two, between audience and author, writing to a close friend versus writing to a professor, and just explore those different ways that you'd write different things. So make a copy of this document to turn into Canvas. In part 1, you're going to use, well, in both parts, you're going to use full sentences. I expect full sentences in both parts. But in part 1, you can just choose 1 or 3 from part 1. Sorry, so you can choose 3 parts from part 1 or 3 of the questions. You don't have to do all of them, but do all for part 2. So, sorry if that was a little bit confusing, but in part 1, there's 6 questions. Just choose 3 of them to do. In part 2, there's, I think, 4 or 5, and I want a short answer for all of those, so you don't get to pick and choose. So that is what you get to do to talk about with a partner, and we will look into that tomorrow. So now just a quick note. The last assignment that you have, this is probably going to be something that you'll do outside of class, and this is, you'll have the rest of today as well as Wednesday to do this. It's going to be due on Thursday before class. You'll write this up, is you are going to talk to someone that has to email or has switched to email since the pandemic started. So find someone who has been working from home, maybe even just for a week or 2 that had to be quarantined, but someone whose life has been affected and they have had to been out of their normal setting since the pandemic started. It can be a parent or family member. Most likely it's going to be this person from what I saw last term, and that is perfectly okay. You could go talk to another teacher that you know super well, because most teachers have definitely had this happen. You could talk to a boss. You could talk to even an older cousin, just anyone who was once working in person, but then for some or all had to move to work remotely when everything was shut down last spring. You are going to interview them. You can call them, you can email them, you can talk to them in person. That is entirely up to you. Here's what you need to ask them, and here's what you also need to write down. Number 1, how did communication change since working from home? Number 2, did emails become more formal or less formal? And number 3, what tips about using email to communicate in a professional setting can they give you? So write up these answers and be prepared to discuss what you learned. By Thursday, you will turn these answers on a document into Canvas before class on Thursday. So just as a short little review, you have your email reflection where you're going and making corrections in your own email that you wrote to me. You have your audience and author worksheet. This one you can do with a partner. If you have not done your Hogwarts quiz, or if you have not chosen your book, please go in and do those. And then lastly, by Thursday, you just need to interview someone and ask them those few short questions. Happy working, everyone. I will see you later.